All right, guys, so like I said in the end of the last video, I want to make it so that when we have items here, it shows this filter input and the clear, but when there's none, I don't want those to show. Okay, now you could just leave them and just have them as static elements that are always there, but I want to make this a little more dynamic so that it just adds to the project. All right, and right now we have some hard-coded list items. I want to get rid of these soon, but let's go ahead and add this functionality first, because I want to show you that these will basically will do a check when the page loads to see if there's list items, and if there is, then it'll show these two. Okay, and then if we delete them all, like if I get rid of them all like that, or we clear them all, then these two should not show. So the way I'm going to approach this is to have a function that we can run at specific times to basically check the UI to see if there's items. So we're going to create a function called check UI. Okay, and we'll right now we're just focusing on adding and removing these two elements, but we'll have some other stuff in here later on that we need when we need to check basically the state of the application. All right, now, and we'll talk about state a little later as well. So we need to get all of the list items, right? And you're going to want to do that from within here. And I'm going to show you why, because first of all, I'm going to put them up here. So, because you might use these items somewhere else, so you might think, well, I'll put them at the top, but there's a problem with this, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. So we can get this from the item list, which is the UL, which we brought in right here, and then on that we can call query selector all, which will get all of the list items. Okay, so we want to check that the items, remember that's a node list. When you use query selector all, it's a node list, which is similar to an array, and we can use the length property on it. So let's say if the items, so if the items dot length is equal to 0, then there's no list items. So that's when we want to not show the clear all in the filter. Okay, I believe we brought the clear in. Yeah, we have a clear button here. I'll go underneath it. Let's bring the filter in. So I'm going to call this item filter, and we'll set that to document.getElementById, and that has an ID of filter. All right, so basically what we want to do here, if there's no items, then we want to take the clear button and we want to make it we don't want it to show. So we're going to say style.display, and we'll set that to none. You could do that, or you could have a class in your CSS that sets it to display none, and you could add that class either way. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the filter. So here we'll say item filter and set that to none. Now there's a few places where we're going to need to run this. Okay, one place I want to run it is right when the page loads. So I'm going to just go down here in the global scope and say check UI. Okay, now if I save that, you'll see that these two are showing. If I come over here and I delete all these list items or comment them out, then you'll see it's not going to show the filter and the clear, which is what we want. Now, if we come back over here, the reason that this is happening is because we're running the check UI as soon as the page loads, right? If we comment that out, then it's going to show the filter items and clear all. So we'll save that, and now we're not seeing the two elements. Now I want to make it so that when we add an element, the two come back, right? So in our check UI, let's actually put an else. So if the items are there, if there is at least one item, then we want to change these to display as block. Okay, and again, you could add a CSS style if you want. I'm just changing the CSS directly. So if I save that, you might think, well, now if I add an item, they'll show up, but that's not the case, because check UI right now, it's only running in the global scope, so it only runs when the page loads, right? It's not going to run every time I add an item. We have to do that ourselves. That's the thing with vanilla JavaScript is you have to account for everything. If you take something away, you have to make sure you put it back. It's not going to do it on its own. Now, frameworks like React, they have mechanisms and different things that you can use to make it easier, where you can set a value and things will automatically happen in the DOM or in the virtual DOM in the case of React. But with vanilla JavaScript, you really have to take everything into account, and you have to do everything manually. So what we'll do is we'll come up here to where we're adding an item, and then we'll check the UI once again after we add the item, which is right here. Okay, so let's actually put a comment right here, because this is where we actually add the li to the DOM. So after that, we'll go ahead and check the UI. Right now, if I put in something here and I click add, it's not working. Now the reason for that is because items, so right here we're checking items.length. We defined that in the global scope up here, and once that's defined, it's defined. And when we first came to the page, there was no list items. So to make this work, for every time we add a list item, we actually have to select them inside of that function instead of in the global scope. Okay, so no matter what right now, like if let's actually console log, let's see, right down here, we'll go ahead and console log items. All right, and then what we'll do is open the console. You can see node list 0. And if we open that, you'll see length 0. If I add something, node list, nothing in it, length is still 0 because it was defined up here, and that's it. What we need to do is take that and run it inside of the function so that every time the function runs, then we're taking the items, and that will take the new items, right? So now, if we add an item here, you can see the two elements show up, and if we look at the node list, it has that li inside of it. If I add another one and it logs again, we have a node list with 2 items, and we have our filter and our clear. Okay, so you just have to kind of account for everything you do when you're writing vanilla JavaScript, and that makes it harder than using something like React in some cases, but you really should know that stuff before you move on to a framework, and it makes you a better programmer. It makes you just better with logic in general. All right, now one other thing I wanted to do is when we delete, I want to have it just prompt us and say, you know, are you sure you want to delete? That's something I actually meant to do earlier when we created the remove item. So this right here, this does the actual remove, so we want to wrap that in an if statement. So we'll move this up into here, and all we have to do is, for a confirmation, is use the confirm function. That's on the window object, so you could do window.confirm if you want, and then just say, are you sure? Okay, and now, and every time I save, it's going to go away, because remember, we're only dealing with the DOM. We're not persisting the data anywhere. So on a page reload, it goes away. Later on, we'll implement local storage. So let's add a couple things here. All right, so we have juice. Let's click this, and we get this, are you sure? We click OK. If we say cancel, then it's not going to finish the delete. Now, if I delete everything, the filter and clear is still there, because again, we have to account for that, right? We have to run it when we actually delete the items. So in remove item, let's go right under where we remove it, and we're going to run check UI again. So now if we add an item and then I delete it, you'll see that the filter and the clear go away. Another case is when we use the clear button. So I'm going to add it again, and this time I'm going to click clear all, and again we have to account for that. So we'll go into clear items, and let's run this right after the while loop. So we'll say clear UI, not clear UI, check UI. You could also call it like reset UI, because that's really what you're doing, or reset state or check state. Any of those will make sense. And now if I click clear all of the items go away, and also the two elements aren't displayed because there's nothing to filter or to clear. Okay, so in the next video, I actually want to work on the filter. Okay, so if we have some items here, we want to filter them, we should be able to type in here, and it will narrow it down to whatever string we have in the input.